Hello and welcome to my budget system project. So today I want to show you how to find the last cell that contains a data validation list in it using VBA. And quick note here, first of all, is xlUp, which simulates Ctrl plus the up arrow on your keyboard, will bring you to the last cell that contains a number or a letter or any form of data, not necessarily that a data validation list is associated with it. So now that I deselected that and do Control Up, it'll bring me to this one and ignore the fact that this data validation was associated with this. So xlUp does not work for finding that cell. So the reason this may be useful, at least in my case, is because I'm developing code for when I click Add Category. I wanna find the cell whether I have it selected or not that has data validation in it. Because let's say that this category does not reoccur automatically, and so I have that option deselected, right? But I still in VBA want to reference this cell as a starting point to, select, offset, and then do all the adding stuff in, etc. And if it doesn't have a validation, then that means it's blank like this one is here, that's underneath the button, whatever, right? That's my use for it, but it may be useful for y'all in whatever way. So the first thing to do is go to your developer tab, which in case you didn't know, you go to File, Options, Ribbon, make sure developer is selected, then you can also do Alt plus F11, bring up your Visual Basic window. Now I'm going to go ahead and click Insert Module, and then if that isn't there, you can just go View Properties window, come here, I'll call this val, under name, you can call it what you want, whatever. I'm sure you all know about all this if you're here in this video already. So the first code I will show y'all is simply checking whether the cell has data in it or not to include validations. So essentially this code will check if the selected cell contains not only data but validation. So I'll show what I mean by that here. If I select this cell and run this code, it'll say it doesn't have a validation list associated to it, but I'll just, there's something in that cell. And then if I select this, does the same thing. And now here's the thing, even if I make this say blank, because my validation list includes a blank cell so that I can turn this to blank, and I have that selected, it will still say that it has something in it because it's including that data validation. Which can be very useful for numerous things. So how this works is the first thing I do is I just declare a variable, I just named it cellVal, and I say that that variable equals selection, just whatever I've selected, right? And then the next thing I have, now this is necessary for the data validation part, is I run this loop, or in this case, it's just a one-time run, so it's just a check, a one-time check. But essentially, this is going to check for if that selection is a validation type, meaning it doesn't have a validation associated to the selected cell. Now, the reason I have this on error statement here is because if that selection did not have a validation type in it, then the macro would stop and you would get an error and everything, which I don't want. Which I don't know why this statement specifically gives an error. So that's why it was necessary to say if there's an error with the selection equaling a validation type, then go to 0. And that's essentially what you have to do there. The next thing I do is I do a check. So the cellVal variable I made, which is selection, is being checked to see if it is greater than 0. So if the selection either 1 has something in it, or B, this was true, or both, the selection will be greater than 0. and I just have it say it has, I should honestly say has something, you know, like I shouldn't say validation specifically because it's validation or something in it. And then this up here will go to 0 if it doesn't have validation in it. And then if there is nothing in the cell, if it is blank, it'll also be 0. So that's 0 plus 0, 0, which means this if statement, this will not be greater than 0. So it'll go to the else, which is it has nothing in it. I know that sounds complicated to explain, but you know, I kind of showed that off already with this here. And of course, here I have the message box as a test, but you can, this is useful to put in whatever you need. So you can put in, you know, call another module to do something, or, you know, if you know, it does have something in it, then offset, you know, whatever your macro and sheet needs are. Like for mine, if it is a validation or whether something's in it or not, then I want to go down and XYZ, right? So like you can make this here do whatever you want whenever there is something in the cell, including validation. And then here, if there is nothing in the cell, if it's essentially blank, then whatever, right? So hopefully that can be useful to y'all. Now, the next thing I want to show you is how I used this here to essentially do Ctrl+Up, but including validation. So I'll show that off here. I'll go ahead and replace all this. So this is very similar, or a lot of similar coding here. The first thing I do before I start anything is I select my starting point, and I just say that, you know, the sheet's budget, and then I say that my starting point is B1000. Now, side note on this, uh, this will essentially do Ctrl+Up by selecting each cell and checking. So I would not put, you know, too crazy, you know, of a number in here. Like I would have it at like 100 or so, whatever you need. I put 1,000 because this, I'm not going to have over 1,000 categories. You know what I mean? Like, and that makes it pretty much infinite for the needs of this sheet. So I just put it at 1,000. But do know that you don't want to put too much in here because it can fill up your RAM. You know, it can crash or it'll take forever, whatever, right? Like I would just, because again, it's checking each cell, which I'm going to get into right now. So it starts by selecting that cell. Then I have a do until loop here, right? So I have the same variable, which is just selection here, which is declared here. Cell val equals selection, right? So I'm basically going to do this entire loop until the selection has something in it, meaning like it's greater than 0, meaning that selection has something, you know, to include validation in it. Can't talk. It's greater than 0. So what it's going to do until then is it's gonna, obviously we selected this, it's gonna offset by -1, meaning it'll go up one cell because I start at 1,000 and then go up. So it's starting here and then going up. And then it will dot select, so it just will select one offset, and then it will do this check again. This variable here is just being declared here for this here, and then obviously it refers to it on the loop up here. So now this is essentially what's done if this is not true, right? To include the same check. If there's a validation in it, then it will be greater than 0, so it'll stop the whole loop, it'll end the sub, and then it will stay selected on that last one, right? And then as well as if there's not a validation and it's greater than 0, you know, it'll be 1, it'll be greater than 0, same thing. So to show this off here, right? If I deselect this, or tell my validation list to be blank, even though it's still validation, and I do Ctrl+Up, it's going to bring me to this one. But if I run this code, you see it on the side here, and it's done. See, it took a little longer. If it was 100, it'd be a lot shorter. Like I said, the more cells it has to go through, the longer it's going to take. But you can see it selected that, right? So, and a nice thing too is I can be anywhere on the sheet. Like I could be selected here and then push my add category button, but it's still going to start the macro off by selecting that cell. and then running, right? And then it will still select the first one that has validation in it. Hopefully that's helpful. That's everything I got. Leave a comment if you got a question, if you have any advice for me, or if you just want to say what's up, and till my next discovery or video.